All right, folks, welcome. This is All-Minus-One, and I am Bill. Thanks for being here. So I see Shelly and Holly are here, and I just messaged you, or Holly, excuse me. Um, I'll probably get a hold of you after the stream. Maybe see if you want to come stream with me another day, another time, or something like that. So I'll hit you up here in a bit. And Shelly, as far as I know, Tank is okay, but as I put there in the chat, I haven't heard from him. So but that's typical because we don't chat a lot. It's usually like the day of the show. But I am looking at uh, after yesterday and recently because we haven't been streaming regularly. I am looking at seeing if I can have a backup guest host. So I'll ask around, talk to some folks. But I know everyone's schedules depending, right? Because life, things, just like I missed this past Monday because I had to get my daughter to work. We got a lot of stuff going on. Um, my wife had her job at White Coat Waste Project had an interview Monday night at Tim Pool's Cast Castle. She wasn't on air, but Justin, her coworker, was. He's the guy that does the majority of the press. But we went out there to hang out for a little bit. Didn't hang out with Tim or anything like that. He was up in the studio and but basically hung around with the staff and stuff and all that. And it was pretty cool. But in any case, um, that's pretty much why I missed Monday. So my apologies. Sorry about the Justify the Memes. That was out of my control. And that show does not work well without a co-host. I've tried to do it before by myself, at least in the beginning where I've had people late. It doesn't work so well. So apologies once again. Caitlin Gibbs, Vostek. Caitlin. I don't know who you are. I don't know what Vostek.tech means either. So, but whatever. In any case, guys, on Thursdays, I've been talking about diet and health stuff and our presuppositions. And so I talked about fasting last week, I'm pretty certain. And, we talked about insulin levels and other things. I showed you some articles. This is pretty much very well established science that lower insulin levels are the drivers for longevity. Now, I'm going to show you some other stuff outside from that suggests otherwise. But we're going to go along with this thing of keeping your insulin sensitivity high and your insulin levels low. So this is just an abstract here, so I can't really cover much here, but it's pretty much what I've been talking about. What I did want to talk about, though, was hear from Reuters specifically. And many of you may know this, but a key to a long life, less insulin in the brain. Now, one of the reasons why they have discovered or figured this out in recent years is because all of the research on Alzheimer's. So with our modern diets, with the standard Western diet, as it is known, which is a highly mixed macronutrient diet, there tends to be a lot of diabetes, a lot of heart disease, and despite what the vegans and the dietary recommendations are in the West, and people following them, actually, people keep getting sick. So why is this? Well, one of the reasons is we eat too many carbohydrates, which drive up our insulin. Another reason is because we don't fast. We eat in 16, 18-hour windows, and then we go about our sleep and get up and start, stuffing food in our faces again. Not everybody, of course, but a lot of us. And this isn't how our bodies work. We're meant to go with periods without food. We need a period of rest for digestion. We need a period for our cellular metabolism to slow down and to switch on to autophagy, which then starts to destroy all of the bad things, all the free radicals, all of the bad particles, particulates in your system, debris, as it's often referred to in medical literature. And After that, it also allows your body to reset its insulin sensitivity. So we're going to read a little bit of this article and a couple more that are related. And this is pretty much going to be it on this front. Next week, I'll come up with more. I have a ton of stuff to talk about. It's one of those things when you approach a topic like this that you've been studying for so long, it gets very hard to whittle it all down because one, I'm not trying to give you a picture perfect example of how you should approach your diet because your diet should be based around you and what works for you and what makes you feel good. Although I think there are a few things that are kind of universal to humanity, right? And part of that is that we need to be eating animal products, of course, the demonized animal products today by the extremists. Let's see. Marguerite says, "Hey, I seen a medication for diabetes causing genital flesh eating bacteria as a common side effect." Well, I guess that's not something we want to take now, is it? It's not something I would want to take. Before I get too far along here, real quick, already 10 minutes into the video, there are links in the description, folks. If you guys want to donate in any way, shape, or form, there is a PayPal, there's a Subscribe Star, there is Entropy, which is the first link, should be the first link. And that is a streaming site that allows you all to send paid chats if you would like. And by doing that, you can help my family and I out because this is basically how I make side cash. I mean, I do several things, but for the most part, I'm a full-time dad. I'm a house dad. So and there are reasons for that because my resume is like security work and head stomper, and I don't want to do that work anymore, frankly, and I find it morally objectionable. So what do you do? What do you do? You got to figure out something. And so I'm trying to put my talents to good use here. The few that I have. So good old fashioned diet and exercise might keep you young by reducing the action of insulin in the brain, researchers report on Thursday. They created mutant mice that overate, got fat, and even had symptoms of diabetes, yet lived 18% longer than normal lab mice. The secret? They lacked a certain key gene that affects insulin, the hormone that regulates glucose. The genetic engineering mimicked the effects of eating less and exercising, the researchers report in the Journal of Science. The study provides a new explanation of why it is good to exercise and not eat too much. Now, one thing I will say, you're not going to out exercise your caloric intake. And if you go back, I made a whole video about caloric intake. My stance on it is pretty much this in a nutshell. You can use it as a measure, but it's an inaccurate measure because your base metabolic rate will change. It will shift depending on a variety of factors. And the food that you're intaking is based on an estimate, an average, if you would, of the caloric intake. So you could be off by large amounts, seemingly. Also, that's not how the body works. It doesn't work exactly the way they explain it. Calories in, calories out. For instance, protein is not generally used as an energy source. It's not what your body uses it for. It uses it for structural repair primarily, or for the making of enzymes and other things. It's not really a fuel source. Fat and sugar is. Alcohol is as well, by the way. Although you're going to be feeling pretty good if you're trying to live off alcohol, not have a lot of motor control, probably. So, excuse me, guys. Had a little frog in my throat there. So, anyways, it says Dr. Morris White, a Howard Hughes Medical Institute investigator at Children's Hospital in Boston, who led the study. The findings also raise questions about how desirable it is to use insulin to treat type 2 diabetes, said the researchers. Well, if it's not too far along, although the medical community does not like to admit this, generally type 2 diabetes can be controlled and possibly even reversed through diet. As an anecdote, my father actually did this himself some years ago. After some time of me warning that he couldn't eat all of the junk food he was eating, and it wasn't until his doctor told him not to be eating all the carbohydrates and to go on a lower carb diet, at least to lose the weight that he had gained and to get his insulin under control, that he started listening. Doctors know that people who exercise regularly live longer on average. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons is insulin sensitivity. Exercise increases your insulin sensitivity. Researchers have also learned that putting animals on a strict diet makes them live longer, though this has not yet been shown to work in people. Well, that's hard to control for. We can't control for people and lock them in a lab for years on end. So we can only base things on short term studies and reporting, and that's not highly accurate. So we can make inferences, but we don't have full data. That's just the reality of this. Anyone who's trying to sell you something that we do is a charlatan. We just don't. There are no real long term studies. The few studies that we do have that are longer term, meaning 6 months to a year or more, that's about as long term as we get, that are accurate studies, are studies that are done in the military, generally speaking. And most of those were done during the 60s and 50s, although studies do and are conducted today. So White's team sought to see if the two effects were linked. They looked at insulin because both fasting and exercise make cells more insulin sensitive, meaning they respond more efficiently to the effects of insulin. They looked at the entire insulin pathway, a series of actions in the cells that control the body's use of insulin. White's team engineered mice that had no working copies of one of the genes involved in this pathway, called insulin receptor substrate 2, or IRS2. We don't need a second IRS, by the way. The first one's horrible enough. In any case, best use of insulin. Mice with no copies of the IRS2 had defective brains and diabetes, but mice with one working copy lived 18% longer than normal mice. What's more, the animals lived longer even though they had characteristics that should have shortened their lives, such as being overweight and having higher insulin levels in the blood. So what happened here? Well, with the engineered mice, the genes that they turned off basically did not allow the insulin to rise in their brains, and therefore, according to the research, somehow extended their lifespan. They were also more active than normal mice, and after eating, their brains had higher levels of compounds called superdioxide demutase, an antioxidant that protects cells from damage. So, tase would mean it's an enzyme. Dismute, I guess, or dismu, I guess, means to keep from mutating, I guess, I would assume. But who knows? I could look that up. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep moving. Diet, exercise, and lower weight. Keep your peripheral tissues sensitive to insulin, said White. That means the diet needs to make, the body needs to make less insulin. So what happens is your insulin receptors get a dose of that hormone. They go, oh, okay, let's push these nutrients into the cells, and then they wait around for a while to basically resensitize. If they do not have enough time to resensitize, then you need more insulin for that same action to work. And this, again, if they don't get resensitized over time, this action continues on till you get insensitivity to the amount of insulin given. And that is essentially what type 2 diabetes is. In some cases, some people have had so much overproduction of insulin that the pancreas completely shuts down production of it. And a lot of people face this in their 30s and 40s, which is way too young for this to be going on. We see this now in children, way too young. This is not something that should be going on, not with the society that we have. Pretty sure, let's see. read some chats real quick here. I'm pretty sure the PayPal link is the first link. Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. I don't know, but I don't have the YouTube pulled up right now. So, because I can see the chat through StreamYards. Mm. Spook says, I know I shouldn't wonder about this stuff since it's a quick way to get into a debate about God, but why do you think God put insulin in our bodies if it's so unhealthy? Maybe it has its benefits. Insulin itself isn't a bad hormone. We're talking about hormones being out of balance. As far as I know, all mammalian life has insulin, but the animals that live the longest, as I've talked about previously, are the ones with the lowest insulin levels. So, it's just a course of action, a mechanism that our body uses. But what I think that this points to is the hedonism of our society, that we have a lack of control, at least in the Western world. So this branches out all across the world. It branches out in many a society, but other societies that are similar in industrialism and culture and whatever else, I would say, like they might have cultural differences, but as far as advancement of and technology, we can look at Asian countries because pretty much, generally speaking, the Europeans and the Asians are the ones that have had the most infrastructure built up over time. And primarily that's because of geography. Good geography has allowed that. Rivers, lakes, good land for soil irrigation. You can build communities, whatever else. It's kind of different when you live in the desert or you live out in the jungle or you live in a mountainous area. These things become very hard then to build great cities. It's not that it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen as rapidly typically. So, in any case, with that, to my mind, civilization is not completely awful, but for the most part, corrupt and evil, and people get decadent, and there's a lot of bad things about it. And in fact, what happens is we tend to, I believe, become disconnected and atomized. And the globalists know this, of course, which is why they use it against us. But that's the long and the short of it. Latinos are more prone to diabetes, probably, but they also, you have to realize the high amount of carbohydrates in their diet, and also um, Hispanic, Latin folks, whatever you want to call them, um, being a not a racial class per se by the science, but an ethnicity. They are an ethnicity between the Hispanic people and the natives there. Not all people have native bloods who are considered Hispanic, but the natives would not have eaten necessarily as many carbohydrates or seed oils as we do today, because those tend to be the two prime factors in it. So let's see. One more comment, guys. I'm gonna have to get through this. So you think the rate of type 2 diabetes in your area probably correlates with the hedonism of humans in that area? No, I think it it has nothing to do with my area. This is my area where I live is actually, I know USA Today and several other outlets have put it in the top 10 of obese folks. I'm obviously, you can tell I'm not an obese person. I'm a small person, although I was a little fatter a few months ago because I had been injured for a while, and it took me a while to get back into shape and quit some bad habits I picked up. But as far as the Western world, the United States, you find this less so in cities, mind you, unless you're going into more poor areas. But again, it depends. But a lot of rural areas are quite obese. We're finding this in Europe. We find this in Canada. We find it in New Zealand and Australia. And again, Spook, I'm generally speaking to Americans. I mean, I'm welcome anyone who wants to come and listen, or the Western world in general, because we have a common heritage based in Greek and Romanism. Now, I get that there are different offshoots. Things have changed over the years and whatever else. But the fact of the matter is, our language, even English, which is a Germanic language and syntax, has about 50% of its words based in in Latin and in Greek. Now, when you start to study the etymology of words and you study like some philosophical ideas and whatever else, you begin to understand how our modern thought through our language is still with those ancient cultures. And I often will talk about, I mentioned earlier, I do what I can with my talents. Well, there's a parable in the Bible from Christ that the parable of the talents. So talent at the time was a coin. It was money. And a master, God, Christ, gave a several coins to three different men. Two of them went out, used their talents, and doubled their money for their Lord, for their master. The third one buried his in a field because he was afraid he would lose it. And the master was mad at that guy because he didn't even try. So that was the lesson. And then it says that he cast them out in the outer darkness, which is a lesson for those Christians who believe that they can just say, hey, Jesus, I love you. Come into my heart. And then go about their lives exactly the same way it always was. So that's not biblical. So anyways, back to the text. Diet and exercise and lower weight keep your peripheral tissue sensitive to insulin. Yes, obesity will make you less insulin sensitive, by the way, folks. Extra padding on the body. White fat and brown fat, something I talked about the other week, but real quick, white fat tends to be more estrogenic. It tends to promote more cortisol. It tends to do a lot of things that, again, these hormones aren't necessarily bad in isolation or in proper balance, but they're bad when they're overabundant, more so than they should be. Even testosterone for men is not great when it's in overabundance. Of course, when it's in underabundance, it's not good either. So it says, since insulin turns on the IRS2 in the brain, that means lower IRS activity, which we've linked to longer lifespan in the mice, he said. One obvious question is whether drugs can mimic the effect of having less IRS, perhaps by interfering with this action. The researchers note that people who live to be 100 or more often have reduced insulin levels and their cells show better insulin sensitivity. New diabetes drugs and increased insulin sensitivity may help too. So there you go. Now, the diet and exercise thing, I think, yes, that works. I think you should include fasting, basic stuff, right? There are ways to exercise, though, too, right? There's all kinds of different ways to exercise. I'm not a fan of endurance running or endurance sports. Go look into it. You'll find a lot of heart attacks in endurance sports and a lot of cancer. Why? Because it's more than the body should be outputting, right? It's more energy than you normally would. And a lot of those people consume high carbohydrate diets as well. So real quick, let me check the entropy real quick, make sure no one's over there. All right. So from Pharmacy Times, I'm going to bigly this some more. Maybe that didn't work. There we go. Study insulin resistance linked to major depression, which makes perfect sense to me. But let's read. Individuals who are insulin resistant are 2.66 times more likely to suffer from major depression than those who are not insulin resistant. Insulin resistance has been linked to an increased risk of developing major depressive disorder, according to results from a study at Stanford Medical published in the American Journal of Psychiatry. If you're insulin resistant, your risk of developing major depressive disorder is double that of someone who is not insulin resistant. Excuse me, guys. We got strange weather around here. It's kind of messing with me. It's like 70 degrees out. It was pretty sure it was in the 30s last night. So it's been getting up to the 50s, but today it got 70. So it's messing with me a little bit because the humidity's changing too. So, anyways, if you're insulin resistant, your risk of developing major depressive disorder is double that of someone who is not insulin resistant. Even if you've never experienced depression before, Natalie Ragson, MD, professor of psychiatry and behavior sciences, said in a press release, insulin resistance is independent of the body's ability to secrete insulin into the bloodstream, as it is the decreased ability of cells throughout the body to use the hormone. Approximately 40% of individuals who suffer from mood disorders are insulin resistant, meaning that 40% of the people who have these psychological disorders could correct these things if they corrected their diet. Now, perhaps there are other underlying issues, like they're surrounded by a bunch of jerks all the time, but you know, alone that might be something. But if you're eating well and your body's functioning properly and you're getting the correct nutrients, your brain and your emotions are going to be more on par with even instead of all over the place. So let's keep that in mind here. You all know when you're hangry, right? Everyone knows you get a little hangry sometimes. It's been a while. That hormonal hunger, your body's saying, "Hey, feed me." And most of the time, you don't necessarily need to eat, but you're used to being fed, and therefore you get a little cranky. You start feeling a little tired. You get a little snippy with your spouse or whomever. You know. See, Spook says, "I gotta go. I got Friday prayer ahead of me today." And okay, all right, bud. Well, take it easy and peace be upon you. I know what assalamu alaikum means. Uh, so yeah, God bless. And we'll see you around. Should be back tomorrow, hopefully talking about stoicism because I haven't done that in a couple weeks. In any case, I'm doing my best, guys. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to be consistent, but baby, and my baby's crawling already. So you know, uh, got a baby, got a 17-year-old working, but not a driver's license yet. Got a wife that's got a pretty important job, and here I am just trying to do some things on my own and with what time I can. So the link between mental disorders and insulin resistance has already been established. Investigators analyzed data from 601 individuals who had never been troubled by depression or anxiety. The three proxies measured were fasting blood glucose levels, waist circumference, and the ratio of circulating triglyceride levels to circulating high density lipoprotein. So, HDL, high density lipoprotein, is not cholesterol, folks, despite what your doctor says for shorthand. Good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. This is not cholesterol. HDL is a lipoprotein, if you would. It's a protein that encapsulates the fat and it carries along in your blood, and it will use that to pick up cholesterol or carry it away as well. Cholesterol, as well as fat, triglycerides, are lipophilic, meaning they don't like water, which is why they have to be contained in a lipoprotein. So that's the short of it without getting too technical. The results of the study showed that the three measures were linked to a 89% increase in the rate of new major depressive order cases. So let me read that again. Analyzed the data of 106 individuals who had never been troubled by depression or anxiety. The three proxy measures were fasting blood glucose levels, waist circumference, which tells you about body fat, and their triglycerides and HDL levels. This also doesn't tell you, by the way, what type of HDL, because there's different types. But that's an aside I'm not going to get into. It says these three had a nearly 90% increase in the rate of new major depressive disorder. Diet alone. And you'll find this. You'll find this if you start and look at vegans. I would suggest a channel I really like. I haven't watched in a while. I've actually talked to about getting on here, but we tend to stream at similar times, at least on Sundays when I stream. and that is Bobby's perspective. Bobby was a longtime a vegan bodybuilder, and he switched over to meat and was really into carnivore for a while to repair his health. And he will tell you about all the nonsense that his mental health was going through while starving his body from animal proteins and fats. And one of the major reasons for that is because the majority of the vitamins you need are fat soluble. They're found in fat. They're not going to be found in plant matter. And the ones that are in plant matter, your body does not absorb very well. So, anyways, every 5 centimeter increase in abdominal fat was related to an 11% greater rate of depression and an increase in fasting plasma glucose of 18 milligrams per deciliter of blood, with a 37% increase of depression incidence. So, here we're seeing again uh, higher insulin levels, higher fat, higher depression rates. But big, fat, and bold is beautiful, folks. So don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. Do you wonder why all these people need to be tyrants and convince you that they are the epitome of health? Mind you, all of us know, most of us, some people have their fetishes for certain shapes and sizes, but most of us know an attractive body when we see it is a fit athletic body or somewhere around there, right? Most men don't like the stick figure that is presented to you by gay men who basically regulate the fashion industry. Most of us, we like hips, we like curves, we like boobs and butts, we like a little meat on our ladies. And I can tell you, I tend to like thinner girls, more petite girls. Um, I really like dancers. Used to date a lot of dancers, but um, you know, that's me. I certainly am just in some manners just as attractive to other women who are a little bit more naturally just thicker, right? And like they're people have different tastes. But the point is that we know what health looks like, and for men, we tend to judge that primarily, just like everyone else, our standards of beauty on symmetry and that hip to waist and shoulder ratio, that hourglass figure. Um, I make the joke today, but it was very true when I first met my wife. I married her because she had good birthing hips. I really did. We had a really easy birth. It was her first child, so that is not normal. I think there were other factors in that, of course, but yeah. In another phase, roughly 400 individuals who did not experience major depression or any sign of insulin resistance were analyzed around the 3 year mark of the study. Nearly 100 individuals became insulin resistant. Investigators compared those individuals to a group uh, who had not become insulin resistant. Though the numbers of the individuals was too small for the three measurement group, it was concluded that these who were insulin resistant were 2.66 times more likely to suffer from major depressive disorder at the 9 months followed up than those who were not insulin resistant. Anyways, we can go on and on and on, but the thing says what it says. Here's the reference. Here's the actual study. Let me actually pull that up. Oh, well, that might be easier, right? Just go to the link. So, yeah, there's the study. No, this isn't a study. This is a press release. Never mind. Hmm. Let's see. Well, I don't see where the study's at. So, oh well. In any case, before we get into the next thing, let me check chat real quick. Trying to be good about that. Good evening, Anti-Commie. How you doing, bud? Probably want to get a hold of you too, Anti-Commie. I don't know what your work schedule's like, but I thought about trying to hit you up last night since Tank had to cancel on me to have a quick guest host. But I'll talk to you later about that, bud. Let's see. Holly says, all you can do is your best, Bill. Well, thank you, Holly. and your best is pretty darn awesome to me. Well, gee. Hello, friends. Ah, I'm not a friend, Matt. You know that, right? I know at this point it's internet humor. There's a range from slim to thick that's healthy that men find attractive. It's not just one body type. Same for women. Exactly. Exactly. Yep. Yep. And again, I prefer, dancers typically are smaller frame ladies. But I prefer that, or I do kind of prefer the more curvaceous model type. And my wife, when she was younger, modeled, and there's a reason for that, right? I know what my types are. Um, Although I tend to go after Latin girls and or Native American girls or Indian, Middle Eastern girls, and I end up with super Germanic white bread. Maybe I am a friend, Matt. Maybe I am. Just don't know it. And there's something comforting in a healthy man with a dad bod. Well, that's where I'm at now. I don't have a dad gut. I just don't have my six pack yet, but I haven't worked out in a month. After road trips kill me. I got too many injuries and stuff, and don't sleep well. I don't sleep well when I'm at other people's homes. Although I've been sleeping pretty good, the baby's really got me kind of reset, so that's a good thing. You guys have been with me long enough, I complain about not sleeping quite a bit. So, um, but I function regardless. So, longevity tied to insulin action in the brain. This is all the way back from 2007. Again, we've known this for a long time. The search for the fountain of youth did not end with Ponce de Leon. Rather, the quest has picked up again lately as researchers have begun to understand the biology of aging and its link to lifespan and disease. Two papers this week deal with distinct mechanisms of anti-aging that have been implicated in Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases. In yesterday's Science, Akiko Tachi, I'm not going to be able to pronounce his Japanese name, Taguchi. Okay. Lynn Wirtz, whatever, and Morris White at the Harvard Medical School showed that reducing insulin signaling significantly in the brain extends the life of mice. So this is of sorts what we were just talking about. So again, this is just a confirmation. It's not just one thing I'm reporting on. This has been known for some odd years. This is the new theory of Alzheimer's. What we do know, evidence-based, is pretty simple. People in Asian countries tend to live fuller, longer lives into their old age, and they tend to stay more active and healthy because we have a system here in the West where often older people just, when they stop working, just go to die. They just stop being active. They just decide, I've had enough of it. A lot of this process, though, happens long before. Long before. A lot of people start aging terribly by the time they're 50 or 60 years old, when they should have at least another 20 years in their life. I mean, life expectancy in the West generally is around 70, but you could push that out a bit longer. And of course, things happen. Disease happens. Insulin is a key player, though, in many diseases that kill us, including heart disease and cancer. So, if you hadn't figured this out yet, guys, you want to keep your insulin low and you want to have high insulin sensitivity. What's the best way to do that? Well, you need to fast and you need to cut the amount of sugar and carbohydrates that you are eating on a regular basis. You cannot be eating that stuff in super abundant amounts. I usually suggest at least under 100 grams a day, but it might take you a while to get there. So maybe under 200 as a start, get down to 150, see if you can live on about 50 or so. I generally intake somewhere between 100 and maybe 50 a day or something like that, unless I'm just trying to not have any carbs at all, which I do from time to time, just be in a completely ketogenic state. So here we have insulin plays a central role in aging, Brown scientists discover. This is from 2004. Source: Brown University. When chemical messengers sent by insulin-like hormones are reduced inside the fat cells on the fruit fly, the fly's lifespan increases significantly, according to new research conducted by Brown University. And of course, I could go through this again. I just wanted to show you this is nothing new. We've known this. This is nearly 20 years old. I'm pretty sure I could find stuff that's older than that. But another thing that is being touted, and I'm going to play this video real quick, is a little video here on low protein diets to delay aging. So I think this makes no sense. I'm not going to play the whole video. We're going to get an introduction to it. You guys can go find it if you want. This is from the Seeky Science Show. So let me mute myself so you guys don't get any echo.
Has sex-specific. Hello and welcome to the Seeky Science Show. So in this video, I'm going to focus on dietary protein restriction, in particular talking about a recent Nature Aging publication. Lifelong restriction of dietary branched-chain amino acids has sex-specific benefits for frailty and lifespan in mice. So to break this video down, I'll begin by talking about protein restriction and try and summarize the previous work that has looked at the implications of protein restriction for healthspan and longevity. And then we'll talk about, in particular, why in this study they focus on branched-chain amino acids, what they are, and why they might recapitulate the same effects of just restricting protein. And then we'll jump into the results of the study and look in particular about these sex-specific differences. And then lastly, I'll give my views and opinions and what further work I think should be done to further explore this topic. But firstly, I just want to make a quick disclaimer that I'm not trying to suggest protein restriction here. You should consult your doctor before trying anything. The aim of this video is to take a look at the data, to have a bit of a discussion, and it's not practical advice. So firstly then, what is protein restriction? Well, you probably don't really need me to explain that. So I think the more interesting question is, why would studies be looking at the implications of protein restriction? And a lot of this, in terms of longevity research, comes from the fact that calorie restriction has been shown in a variety of different model organisms to extend not only lifespan, but also health span. And calorie restriction here is when food intake is restricted by around 20 to 40%. But the interesting thing with these observations is it just a generic reduction in calorie intake, or is it the reduction of specific dietary macronutrients that are the result of these improvements in longevity and healthspan? Now, understanding diet is notoriously complex, and a lot of research is still being conducted to try and understand what particular components are mediating the benefits seen in calorie restriction. And so on from that, a lot of research has already been done to try and understand a reduction in protein and its implication on longevity. One of the reasons for focusing on protein is due to the fact that amino acids that make up protein activate the mammalian target of rapamycin, known as mTOR, and activates this signaling pathway, which is...
So mTOR is something you're going to hear a lot from vegans, and mTOR expression. Now, mTOR is bad. mTOR is not bad, just like any of the other hormones. It is how much is it expressed. They also often talk about insulin-like growth hormone, IGF-1, and how that's bad, and all these other things that aren't necessarily true. But again, this is just something you will hear from some people, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And the data contraindicates this, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm going to let this play. I have no desire myself to make a presentation about this, so that's why I'm using someone else real quick.
Notorious for upregulating growth within a cell, and it's also known in studies that can inhibit the activity of this protein complex. For example, using rapamycin have also been shown to extend lifespan in model organisms, suggesting that part of the effects of calorie restriction on improving longevity may be mediated through the reduction in mTOR signaling, mediated through the reduction in protein. And one study that I want to bring up is this 2014 cell metabolism paper that emphasized that it's actually the ratio of these macronutrients, not necessarily just calorie intake, that can dictate the health benefits seen in calorie restriction. And they summarize their work quite nicely in this figure here, where you can see that by the different ratios of protein to carbohydrates have different impacts for the metabolic health and lifespan of the rodents.
Now, in part, I covered this the other day, last week, that is, and that depending on how you are ingesting your food, the combinations, the mixing of food is going to depend on how your insulin goes up. So, sugar alone will raise your insulin. Amino acids, that is protein alone, will raise your insulin. Fat does not necessarily, but the combination of them changes the rate at which it is released. So these things are important to understand to some degree. Now, I would suggest that you try not to mix your macronutrients too much, or if you do, you keep fat or carbohydrates lower because of the Randall cycle. And the Randall cycle I mentioned practically every time because it bears mentioning because it's never mentioned except for outside of a small sphere of people. That is when you're eating about equivalent amounts of energy from both fat and protein, and then your body does not consume either one. I mean, it's in your system, but the cells aren't picking it up because your body doesn't know which one to prioritize. And so it tends to shuttle it to fat. And this is why the standard Western diet is so fattening. One of the reasons why. Also, if you listen to someone like Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who is often on Joe Rogan's podcast, she'll talk about the mixing of saturated fat and sugar and how that causes all these problems. It's not saturated fat alone. What is happening is the Randall cycle. In saturated fat is completely innocuous. And in fact, it's probably ideal for you to have in your system. Whereas polyunsaturated fats, you only need a small amount of. And that's what all of the vegans and the globalists are trying to have you eat. So again, I had Josh Ham on here running for Texas House District 12, and he was on here Sunday, and he talked about this. Do you know the difference between are meat and eggs and milk good for you or not? If like that they are, but yet these people wish to tell you that they are not, and they will manipulate the science. The WHO, very specifically, some years ago, decided that they weren't going to, or they were going to recommend vegan diets to pregnant and nursing mothers and infants, and it's perfectly safe. They came about this by vote. The scientists on the board who voted against it were not vegans, but they were outnumbered by the vegans, so the vegans won. Folks, when people say trust the science, they're saying trust my politics. That's the bottom line to this. Trust what I believe, not what the data says. And it's rather evident to me what the data says. But again, I've been studying this for a long time. The many things I do when I'm not watching news is watching stuff like this. So, if it's not, basically, I'm either watching news, I'm watching something about health and diet, I'm watching something of religious. That's what I spend my time on for the most part, other than directly directly taking care of my family, dinner, that kind of stuff, right? So, anyways, we'll let this play some more.
So as you can see in this figure here, low protein is associated with benefits, but these benefits seem to be enhanced in terms of metabolic health and lifespan when combined with high carbohydrates as opposed to high fats. But we also know from the studies already published that it's not quite this clear. For example, in this 2014 study, they showed that the benefits of protein reduction may be age dependent. For example, they saw that respondents aged 50 to 65 reporting a high protein intake had a 75% increase in overall mortality and a fourfold increase in cancer death risk during the following 18 years. However,
now, one thing I do want to make a note of, sorry guys, I don't want to stop this a billion times, but I'll probably run a little over today. So notice respondents. This is reporting. This is an epigenetic study. This is why everything in this study is wrong. It's flawed because it's not direct observation, it's reporting. If I asked you what you ate last month, what would you say? I said, give me a list of everything you ate last month, the proportions, the amounts, yada, yada, yada. Would you really be able to tell me? The answer is no, you would not, unless you have a photographic memory, right? It's just not going to happen. So this is one of the major flaws in these studies, and these are again are the studies, the type of studies that they want you to listen to believe their case. Just like the China study from the other year tried to suggest that the Chinese are so healthy because they eat so many vegetables. That is an absurd statement. Chinese food is not like American Chinese food, folks. Chinese food in China is a lot of animal products, a lot of fat, a lot of pork. You know, you can talk to Tank about it sometime. Maybe ask him, send him a super chat when we do the Ins Justify the Memes, because Tank's been to China several times. So just realize that these people aren't being up and up with you.
That high protein intake in respondents over 65 were associated with reduced cancer and overall mortality, suggesting that low protein may be more beneficial for those under 65 than those over 65. And more on from that, well, we need protein. We need protein for muscle, and it's also been shown to reduce the risk of sarcopenia. Moreover, high protein has commonly been assigned in diets as it can make you feel more full. But all in all, the evidence currently seems to be swaying towards low protein diets being healthier and associated with longer life. And this reminds me of the moment in Down to Earth with Zac Efron when he was talking with Walter Longo and was told that low protein diets are associated with longer lifespan. And I honestly really felt for Zac at that point. He looked absolutely terrified, but it is still yet more complex because it's probably not only protein quantity, but also protein quality that is playing a role. For example, there's been studies that have looked at the differences between plant protein and animal protein, with plant protein generally being supported as being healthier. And more from that, as we'll see in this study, it seems to be that certain amino acids that make up protein may be having a bigger role than others.
All right, I'm gonna leave it there. So you saw where that was going, right? Plant protein, plant protein, plant protein. So let's go here to this little blog here. And guys, I got a couple more articles. So I want to get this done for the week. So we might go about hour and a half today. I started a few minutes early, anyways, because I got a long intro. But I like the long intro because it takes a while when I go live for some of you guys to pour in. So you know, although I get copyright struck every time I run it, but I'm not monetized, so I don't care. Anyways, um, why protein restriction for longevity makes no sense. There we go. Here's my current opinion. The data supporting protein restriction for longevity is not strong and must be contrasted against known determinants of protein restriction with aging, like sarcopenia and frailty. So sarcopenia is basically your muscles atrophying, right? By the way, this guy is a doctor, as far as I know, a PhD at least. And this little CISSN behind his name means that he is a researcher, if I'm not mistaken. So he is trained to be a researcher, unlike me, who just does research. Um, Here is my caveat. This doesn't mean that you need to eat a high protein diet. That's a false dichotomy. Now I'll explain. Um, and just real quick, if you guys want to know my take on this, I don't think protein should be exceeding more than 30% of your daily caloric intake, and probably 20% is just fine. It depends on your dietary goals. The energy has to come, you have to have energy from somewhere though. So if you're, let's say, eating mostly fats, you're going to have to eat, 80% fat, 20% protein. Sometimes that's a little hard to do. And especially if you're trying to lose fat, because part of the idea of eating a lot of fat is having a more lipid mobility in your system. And so sometimes it may be better to reduce your fat intake so it takes it from your body itself. Now, these are hypotheticals because I don't know of a lot of research that suggests or tells this, but that seems to be the case from people's experience. And you'll see this if you start looking into, you start just Googling, looking up, or putting on YouTube, weight loss with carnivore, or why am I not losing weight on carnivore? And what you'll see is a lot of people saying you need to up your protein so your body can dive into its own fat stores for energy. That, you know, seems to be the case. You could do the calorie restriction route, but the problem with that is that you're going to be hungry a lot. And being hungry a lot is not fun. And it's more likely for you to cheat on your diet. Eating a lot of protein gives you satiety, and it makes you not so hungry. It actually uh, will naturally allow your body to consume less calories. And I mentioned this a while back on one of the first of this series that I was talking about with protein intake. There is no known, based on meta analysis looking at hundreds or thousands of studies. There is no known risk to high protein consumption in kidney failure. It is only a potential issue if you already have failing kidneys, if you already have poor nephron health. That's when it's an issue. Otherwise, it's not really an issue at all. And in fact, it seems to be, based on the science, protective of your kidney health to have a little excess protein. So there you go. But you don't have to take my word for it. Go back and look at that, because I had the study, whatever that was. It should be in a playlist somewhere on my YouTube page, guys. If you're not on YouTube, I don't know what to tell you, because uh, it's where I have all these things organized. I don't know about the other independent outlets, if they have playlists and such. I don't mess with them that much. They're a lot slower. I have used them. And I am wanting to get my Odyssey up so I can live stream there, but which there is a link in the description for, folks, if you want to go over there and subscribe to that. So I can start live streaming there. Don't have to worry about YouTube censorship. So is it margarita or is it margarita? Because that's a question I have. But you're asking, is keto good? You should be in ketosis on a daily basis when you go to sleep. If you are not, your body is not going through its natural processes. I think keto is good. I think being in an extended keto state for long periods of time, there's nothing unhealthy about it. Although optimally, your body should be cycling in and out of it on a regular basis. See, I kind of believe in these ideas of ebb and flows. That's how most of things in nature work. And I believe that's how our bodies work. There are times of abundance of food and there are times of famine of food. And all we experience today is an abundance of food. And again, this goes back to our hedonistic lifestyles in our modern society. Heard a guy cured himself with raw sheep's milk. Um, yeah, goat's milk, sheep's milk is much closer to human milk. Raw milk's pretty good. I raised my daughter on it, my 17-year-old, till she's about 5. I used to when I lived in Maryland, I would just drive over the border to Pennsylvania because it's illegal there. And then I would cross state lines like Kyle Rittenhouse, you know, with my illegal raw milk into Maryland, and while I worked at the sheriff's department. So I guess I broke some laws. I guess the feds should come get me. I don't know. But my daughter's health was a little bit more important than stupid arbitrary laws that were put back into place during the progressive era because they didn't know how to properly handle food sanitation. And that's the only reason why we pasteurize and homogenize milk, guys. Milk doesn't go bad. It just turns into sour cream and cheese and yogurt. That's what milk does. It does not go bad. Josh said, saw you were online, had to swing by and send a like. Well, appreciate it, bud. Appreciate it very much. Ketones can be hard on the kidneys depending on your genetics. There is that. So there are things I've talked about this. I'll talk about a whole thing eventually. I want to lay instead of getting into like specific dietary, very specific dietary guidelines. I just kind of going to give you guys a good overview of what you should be considering when it comes to your health. If you're going to eat fast food on a regular basis, I can guarantee you're getting a lot of processed junk in there, right? Extra chemicals, whatever. You're getting meat that is of the lowest quality generally. The bread that you are eating is low quality and of course going to be very insulinogenic, and your french fries are going to be very insulinogenic, and then you're going to have a soda with that, which is going to be very insulinogenic because it's all carbs. And so a lot of the carnivore people, and by the way, guys, I'm not necessarily carnivore, I'm not necessarily keto, I'm not necessarily any of these things, although I do believe in an animal-based diet. I do believe that we are hyper carnivores. I do believe that probably the majority of our calories should be coming from animal foods. And I also think, despite what the crazy leftists say, it is far more environmentally sustainable. In fact, I would say that humans degraded once agrarianism became the norm, and that's evident by uh, skeletal remains and looking at their teeth and their stature and those kind of things. And so, just like we talked about before with your mental health and depression, I think things happened no differently in ancient times. In fact, one of the things I talked about a while back uh, might have been when I had the alabaster on was why do the Egyptians get why did they get fat? And they did get fat. And of course, again, you'll find vegans say, no, they didn't. No, that's not right. They were perfectly healthy. No, no, no. They all had pot bellies and they were skinny fat. They had no muscle. So, Violence is Life says, I'm watching on DLive. Cool, cool. Yeah, I don't really keep those up because sometimes they mess up my system because I don't have a super awesome, hyper speed, wonderful computer. Maybe if I get a couple thousand subs, and I get enough chats in, I can do that. But until that day comes, we're gonna have to suffer with Bill's all in one that he's had for 5-6 years. So, and by the way, over on Entropy, since you're talking about DLive, Anti-Commie says, explain insulin resistance for us morons. Also, busy as you'd expect, a fed like me is how work is. Uh, keep up being a man. No need for apologies. Well, I mentioned what insulin resistance is early in the stream, Anti-Commie. Essentially, you have insulin receptors on your cells, right? My finger. We'll do two fingers. The insulin comes along, locks into that receptor, and basically it's like, oh, okay, and then allows nutrients to come in. This is the unscientific short version. What happens is as they get resistant, they believe that the insulin's still in there, and insulin comes in and goes, nope, nope, nope. And so then it's got to go send two in, and they go, oh, now we have two. And next time it's like three, and so forth. And hopefully that gesture was not too sexual. In any case, as that happens, your body basically just needs time to reset. There are certain processes, there are certain hormones that need to uh, come about, like glucagon, right? That takes up, or sorry, that releases the glucose in your blood or whatever, and then that insulin comes along, passes it along, or glucagon does the opposite. I don't remember. Again, guys, a lot. There's a lot of this stuff, a lot of stuff, and it gets confusing when you don't work in that field. But I'm pretty sure that's correct. But um, there's what growth hormone. Growth hormone goes up. There's an inverse relationship with growth hormone and insulin. What does growth hormone do? Well, it promotes fat burning. So again, IGF-1, as I talked about earlier, insulin-like growth factor 1 is a type of growth hormone that is released generally via exercise and during periods of fasting. If you look into studies of fasting, you'll find that growth hormone goes up significantly over the days, I think by several 100%. So as that happens, your insulin gets really, really, really low. Well, this happens on any sort of fast that you do for any period of time of, you know, about 12 hours or so. And this is why last week I talked about Dr. Sanchen Panda's work on time restricted feeding. There's a lot of people out there. What's his name? I think Jason Fong is one of the guys. He's a big fasting proponent. Trust me, I'll make a fasting video at the end of the year here, right after Christmas, because I always fast from Christmas until New Year's. I always fast in that period. It's the one time a year I do at least a week long fast. I might do it elsewhere throughout the year or a couple days here and there, but I always do at least a week long fast then. So, anyways, let me get back onto here. Holly says, yes, that was sexual, but we are all adults here. I don't know, Holly. One of the major issues with the literature surrounding protein restriction for longevity is that it comes mostly from studies in mice, which are not appropriate models for extrapolating effects in humans. The cells of mice and humans use similar molecular mechanisms to regulate growth, replication, aging, and death, which is one reason why mouse models are not used in to study human diseases and aging processes. Another reason that mice are used, especially for research into aging, is because their average lifespan is about 24 months. Max is 48 months, so far shorter than 80 years of average, and max about 120 years. So day one for mice equals 40 days for humans, or 1 day for mice. Ah, that dyslexia, man. It'll get you. Of course, I was driving earlier today. I saw a sign and I was like, "What's that word?" And I figured it out and I was like, "Oh, I know that word." I can't remember what it was now, but I completely messed it up. It was something completely different in my head. Uh, the course and correlation changes based on the developmental period. Mice pups are weaned after 28 days compared to 6 months for a human infant. 6 months? It's a pretty early weaning, but that is what they do recommend to some degree. I know because I just took my daughter to the doctor, and they were like, "Yeah, you can start introducing foods if you want." I'm like, mommy's milk's pretty good. Lots of stuff in there." Mice attain puberty around 42 days compared to 11.5 years for human. So one mouse day equals 100 children days. Mice become adults after 8 to 12 weeks, average of 10 compared to 20 years for humans. We say 20 years, but if you really want to count human beings as an adult, I would go with the number 25 because that's when you're fully developed. Prefrontal cortex, bones, all those things are pretty much set then. Any time before that, you're still growing, although it does significantly slow down. Um, Puberty, I consider generally to be the beginning of adulthood because you can procreate. And once you can procreate, you need to be held accountable, don't you think? Just saying. Um, I think one of the mistakes that we make in Western society with puberty is we treat our children as if they are little kids still. And I know it's hard to get the change for some people, but we treat them like they're little kids. And don't get me wrong, they believe that they're smarter than they are and all this other stuff. But what we should be doing is giving them more responsibilities because that's how you encourage and foster responsibility and leadership as you give it away. See, when you don't give it away, what you do is you encourage dependence. And also what you'll get is with some people is rebellion. And a lot of the reason why we have that though as well is because we don't have a strong society. So our society is in the West, that is in a vast mass identity crisis where we don't know who we are or what we want to be. So why would our children? And this is why adolescence is not seen when you study anthropology cross culturally. It happens, yes, but it's not the same. It's not the same because those kids, they might make a stupid decision or two, but they have a lot of responsibility. They have an identity given to them. They know what they're going to be. They know their roles in life. So that takes away all of the mystery that we have here in the West, where we're asking children, right? I know I just said they're basically adults, but I mean mentally they're still not fully developed, right? We're asking young adults, would be a better way to put it, who haven't really learned how to rationalize well yet, who don't know how to control their emotional impulses, who are extremely horny, by the way, because they have all those hormones going through them. We're we're asking them to decide their own futures, but yet we don't want to give them any actual responsibility. We want them to make all judgments about who they're going to be from the time that they're in their early 20s, or at least maybe mid 20s, until they die when they're 70, 80, 90 years old. But we don't treat them like adults. You should think about this. Those of you who are going to have kids. Uh, Milk and honey in Egypt. Oh, it wasn't just milk and honey. They ate mostly grain. Lots and lots of wheat. Had distended bellies. All right, let's get back to this. Margarita the flat. I guess that's how you say it. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. But you just have to understand. I'm dyslexic, so pronouncing, like, I think I might have the the word right, and it might not be correct. So that's all. But I thought it was Margarita. So, um, anyways, I got off on a tangent, as I do. Mice become adults after 8 to 12 weeks, average of 10 compared to 20 years for humans. So one mouse day equals 104 for adolescent days. Mice become infertile around 15 months compared to 51 years for human women. So one mouse day is 41 adult days. Mice are elderly. You get his point, though, here. No matter what stage of life you look at, it is clear that any intervention in mice showing an effect will require a significant amount of time to occur in humans if it occurs at all. One reason for this difference in lifespan is owed to differences in metabolism. Mice have an energy expenditure rate per unit of body mass that is 7 times greater than that of humans. And you'll find this typically in smaller animals actually have accelerated metabolisms. Mice lose 12 to 17% of their body weight after a 12 to 18-hour fast. That's a lot. That's a lot of body weight. Wow. And you're not going to lose that much. You might lose 2 to 5% on a week-long fast, and most of it's going to be water weight. It'd be like the first week you went on a ketogenic diet. Everyone's like, I lost 5 pounds already. It's like, nope, you lost a bunch of water because there was no carbohydrates holding on to that in your muscles. They're depleted of glycogen. So up to 30% of their body weight after 72 hours, and will die after 5 days of fasting. And you could fast well into a month or more. I'm not suggesting you just do that off the bat, especially if you're not healthy, but just saying you can. Metabolic stability. When it comes to studying aging and the means to slow it down, mice are not just small humans. Metabolic stability, longevity principle posits that dietary restriction increases lifespan by increasing the stability of metabolic networks. Now, we talked about this last week. What it seems to be is actually it's the fasting that does it because it's linked to the insulin. But there should be an effect as well if you eat reduced calories. You still won't have as much a rise in insulin. So again, if you don't remember those, go back and watch them. If you haven't seen them, go back and watch them. See what I'm talking about. See what I say. and refresh your memory. This principle fits nicely with the theory that aging is owed to an accumulation of damage over time. Damage cause instability. And here's something I talked about as well is telomere damage. You have so many telomeres, the ends start to come off. Over time, the more and more you lose them, the more and more you age. And that it's a thing of damage. And there are many things you can do to prevent that. And again, we want to talk about aging well, and guys, I'm not perfect. I might be fairly young looking as a 40-year-old man, but I've smoked for a long time, getting ready to quit here, end of the year. It's like going to be done. Got to be done. I want to live longer. I'm going to have, hopefully grandchildren by my oldest daughter, and the next 10 years, and my youngest, who was just born, I want to be around for when she has kids 20 years from now or more. So got to do the right things. But and I've lived a hard life in other ways as well. um but there are certain things that I do that have kept me relatively healthy. Anytime I've ever had any sort of blood work or anything, it's always been great. My blood pressure is great. All of those things, despite my bad habits. A lot of that could be my genetics. That could be that God blesses me. I don't know. Uh, but I do know that these things are found in older people as well. Like I just showed you before, that they're going to have lower levels of circulating insulin and more insulin sensitivity. There are many causes of damage. Oxidative damage is one source that plays an important role. The oxidative damage is far more likely when you are on a sugar-based, carbohydrate-based diet, by the way. Just saying. Far less free radicals are emitted through ketogenesis, or just the general fat burning. By the way, if you're burning fat, it doesn't mean you're necessarily burning uh, alpha hydroxybutyrate as a ketone. But I should tell you this, that you can eat sugars from fruit like fructose, and as they get stored in your liver, they can be released as triglycerides and ketones. Your liver has the ability to do that, to convert them. Protein restriction reduces levels of oxidative damage, helping to explain its link to longevity. However, the low mass specific metabolic rate of humans means less oxidative stress and a better ability to maintain cellular balance compared to high mass specific metabolic rate of mice. Logically, then, mice will be more responsive to any intervention that reduces oxidative stress, like protein restriction. So, big globally gloop there. Our lower metabolic rate basically creates less metabolic waste, and in that, less oxidative stress. That's all that says. You guys with me? Oh, I'm asking, will I make a TRDL version video about this? Dude, if I had the time, Andre, if I had the time, I would love to do it. In fact, I have another channel that I started while I took a break, since YouTube wanted to strike me on things. Um, and I'm going to do edited stuff over there, but I haven't even messed with that in the last 2-3 weeks, because time, and my my daughter's been a little bit better lately, but for a few weeks there, she was being really grouchy, and it's because she was just learning to crawl, and she couldn't quite get where she wanted to. Now she's mobile and she's not complaining as much. She's sitting upright, playing, and whatever else. But you know, my wife, she's she's got to work, and her work is pretty important. Not that what I'm doing is unimportant, but I have a small following right now. But what she's doing is helping defund the Wuhan lab, and finding out, that there's Monkey Island that Anthony Fauci has funded, and that they did Beagle experiments, and et cetera, et cetera. Because she works for White Coat Waste, and that's what they've been doing. And so pretty important, and the CEO, Anthony, he's a nice guy and all, but um, he's still getting this thing up and running. And what my wife does is fundraising, so she's helping him out quite a bit because it's her dream job to get these things defunded as well. So, anyways, it's a little aside there. But if I had time or I had the money, I could hire somebody to clip these. However, yeah, okay, I read that. When researchers attempt to extrapolate to humans the longevity effect of protein restriction in mice, they find that consuming a diet of 12% protein for 18 years onward will add a meager 3 years to life. So there you go. And what we do know is as you get age, that as you age, your muscle mass, but more specifically your strength, are really important. And protein deficiencies, guys, will make you weak, and it will degrade your bone and tendon integrity. It's not just about calcium. It's not just about folate. It's not just about a couple minerals. You need that protein. You need your essential amino acids. And then there's another aspect to this, which is methylation, um, which I promise I will talk about sometime in the future. But basically, too much muscle meat, I believe, there's too much methionine in it, and you get too many methyl groups, which ends up affecting your neurology and stuff. That's not good either. There's an easy way to offset that. You just have to have some of the amino acids that are in, things like collagen and connective tissue, gelatin, that kind of stuff. That's not hard to do. Have some bone broth or buy a supplement and take 2 little pills daily or something. Um, anyways. So you consume a diet of 12% protein or about 60 grams if you eat 2,000 calories per day. That's nothing. I ate like 40 grams of protein for breakfast. So that was nothing. And then I ate like 4 hours later. And it was it's ground lamb, ground beef, and and pork sausage with a little bit of onion chopped up, and some carrots that I fried up in it. And then I put sour cream and cheese in that. And for breakfast, I put 3 poached eggs into it. So it's just all protein and fat, right? Um, so yeah, 60, that's like an abysmal amount. That's like 1 steak a day, maybe. Most steaks, about a 12, depending on what kind of steak, how lean it is. 8 to 12 ounce steak, somewhere around there is going to give you about 50, 60 grams of protein. Um, You can read about protein recommendations here. Older adults require at least 1.2 gram per day. So right here, he's saying about 0.8. I saw another YouTube video, like the one I showed you earlier, that said around 0.7 is perfect. 0.8 is generally the consensus of the minimal amount, so you don't have muscle wasting, right? So your muscles don't basically get stripped away. But yeah, the elderly require more protein to offset sarcopenia, which is defined as an impairment of physical function, walking speed, grip strength, combined with a loss of muscle mass. It is the loss of muscle mass. The other things are the effects of the loss of muscle mass and muscular strength. Sarcopenia is a primary cause of frailty and with aging, which itself is associated with higher risk of having disabilities that affect your ability to perform daily activities of living, having to go to a nursing home and experience fractures, yada, 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 and so forth. So let's read a few more things. And until my wife yells at me, hey, we'll go 2 hours today, guys. At some point, she might yell at me. Anti-commie, I'll come back here to you on entropy in a bit. I just wanted to see if there's any page chats over there. I'm gonna get to you guys in chat too. But the more I get distracted, the more I go on my rants, my side tangents about all the things that I've read over the years and remember or don't remember. So from Rogue Fitness, How carbohydrates, not protein, promote aging. There's a lot of confusion. I told you I would talk about mTOR, by the way. Sorry you had to wait so long to get here. mTOR will be talked about. There's a lot of confusion and misdirection in the area of diet and aging. So let's see if we can get some of it straightened out. mTOR is the malign target of ram- ra- rampicin, a molecular mechanism that integrates growth and energy signals. When mTOR is activated by nutrients, it signals the cell to grow. mTOR is likely very important in promoting aging. Now, why is this? The same with IGF-1, because cellular growth can become cancerous. Cellular growth is part of what is the aging process. However, it is not necessarily a bad thing. This is why you need to fast for autophagy to get rid of these things. Do you see how there's got to be a feeding and a resting period, right? Our lives are cyclical. Life is cyclical. Nature is cyclical. It's how it works, right? And that is in a daily basis. Otherwise you wouldn't have to sleep daily, right? You don't necessarily need to eat daily either, by the way, folks. Although most of us do because it's the most convenient way. And if you do restrict the volume of food that you're eating, your stomach will shrink. Your stomach is a muscle that has a capacity to expand, right, or contract, and it will contract more and more the less food that you eat. And so this, of course, generally happens when people aren't eating for a while, a lot, because maybe they're ill, right, or they take on a fast themselves purposefully. They they can't eat as much as they normally would because their stomach is shrunken. They get full quite quickly. And it's not just that, though, by the way. I shouldn't just leave it up to that. There are also hormone actions going on that they're like, oh, what's this? Oh, okay, that's good. We're satisfied. You know, your satiety comes much sooner generally once you have depleted yourself of food for a while. And again, this is how quickly your basal metabolic rate changes, because it will uh, downregulate itself to some degree to preserve, skeletal muscle, that is, and energy stores. So very, very important. And by the way, that's also why, most likely why growth hormone goes up, because growth hormone protects skeletal muscle while you're fasting, so you don't waste it, right? It's not being used. You'll just go into your body fat stores and probably whatever, exercise you might do, whatever glycogen is stored in your muscles at the time. So we know this because rampus, if I can say this, rapamycin. That's what it is. Rapamycin. See, when you know words but you can't say them. Rapamycin, a drug that extends lifespan in lab animals, inhibits mTOR. The basic idea is that mTOR signaling is vitally important in the growth of an organism, but that this activation after maturity results in aging. Nutrients activated by mTOR, hence the power of caloric restriction to prolong lifespan. Fewer nutrients, less mTOR activation, longer lifespan. Another lifespan promoting agent is also deactivates mTOR, is metformin, which I've talked about a little bit before. It says iron cleates or cleators deactivate mTOR, and any interest rampicin or whatever. I said it one time right. That's all I need to say it. All right. Some drug, and cleators, by the way, are just things that pull minerals away. So, by the way, heavy metal cleators that you can consume in case you have some sort of, I don't know how well this works, but supposedly it works. You want to cleate certain metals out of your system, heavy metals. parsley and cilantro. Those are heavy metal cleators. What sort of nutrients activate mTOR, and are they equally potent in activation? It's common to read that amino acids from protein activate mTOR, and indeed they do, but this is a very incomplete picture. Hence, the obsessive idea in some quarters that dietary proteins promote aging is, if not entirely wrong, incomplete and misleading. And this is the first argument you will probably hear from every vegan against eating animal meat. Yet every vegan you will ever meet that will make this argument to you, if they've been doing it for some years, will look sickly and weak. They will look at their eyes, and I don't mean they don't look like they just didn't have a good night's sleep. I mean, they will have sunken in eyes. They will have low collagen reserves. Collagen's one of the things that is anti-aging, folks, because it's what helps hold your skin together so you don't have all them wrinkles, right? One reason the picture is misleading is because mTOR is intimately linked to insulin, the hormone whose primary purpose is to regulate glucose metabolism. See, the illustration below shows the linkage. Note the glucose also activates mTOR. So insulin IGF-1 receptor. And then here's your IRS 1 and 2 we showed before. And then your PI3K, which I'm not sure what that is off the top of my head, but in any case, it's what stimulates mTOR. And then here you have this other pathway as it reuptakes, I guess, whatever amino acids and glucose. Okay, so this is being released, I would assume, from your body. Yeah. Translation, autophage. So that's what this is showing, more or less. Insulin activation is linked to mTOR activation, and what activates insulin the most? Carbohydrates. IGF-1 signaling is also implicated in aging. Insulin and IGF-1 levels are highly correlated. So there's that, right? Told you about that before. Carbohydrates increase the risk of breast cancer recurrence 5-fold in IGF-1 positive cancer by increasing IGF-1 activity. So insulin drives this, right? It can drive cancer, can drive IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor. It's not growth hormone, not the same thing, but they both have similar mechanism or similar actions, but they're sort of inverse. And IGF-1 you'll hear about a lot in bodybuilding circles for guys trying to put on mass. Intermittent fasting promotes longer lifespan. Fasting appears to have all the benefits, but little of the downside of calorie restriction. Fasting activates AMPK. By the way, believe it or not, I didn't read this. I've had this article for weeks. I read the title of it, saw it was from Rogue Fitness, assumed it was going to be good, and I am correct. I did not read this article at a time, and it's pretty decent. Reads a lot better than the paper, the actual scientific papers, and it still has some technical jargon in it. AMPK, which inhibits mTOR. Note that other anti-aging interventions like rapamycin, there you go, and metformin also activate AMPK. But what aspect of fasting AMPK is it absence of food altogether? And let me look AMPK up for you guys, just because I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. I know it's something kinase at the end, but I want the full name. Activated protein kinase. Okay, thank you. So, geez, Science Direct would probably be the best, but whatever. We'll do this real quick. The master metabolic regulator. So here we have glycolysis, which is part of the use of glucose, basically glucose transport, fatty acid oxidation, fatty acid synthesis. So these are all of your body's energy systems, right? This is how you can get energy, or not the actual energy system, but the fuel sources: lipolysis, cholesterol, triglyceride synthesis, glucagon synthesis, protein synthesis, and then the pancreas, B cell insulin secretion, fatty acid synthesis in the liver, and cholesterol synthesis, adipose tissue, fatty acid synthesis. So this is when your body is actually releasing it from your stored fat. Heart, fatty acid oxidation, glucose uptake, glycolysis, and skeletal muscle, fatty acid oxidation, glucose uptake. So it regulates all of these things. And there are, I believe, not mistaken. Well, anyways, I'm not going to get into that. I'll get into that another time. I'm about to say, this is already long enough. I'm not going to sidetrack anymore. Is it the absence of food altogether, or the absence of a particular macronutrient? So what aspect of fasting activates AMPK? Carbohydrate restriction regulates the adaptive response to fasting. Human subjects either fasted for 3.5 days or fasted and got a lipid infusion, and changes in plasma glucose, free fatty acids, ketone bodies, insulin, and epinephrine concentrations. During fasting, were the same in both the control and lipid studies. These results demonstrates that restrictions of dietary carbohydrates, not the general absence of energy intake itself, is responsible for the initiating of the metabolic response to short-term fasting. So what is he saying? He's saying that basically in this study, when people had glucose, they had an activation of the mTOR, but when they didn't, the AMPK kicked in and the mTOR wasn't. I am pretty certain that's what I just read there, right? That is not to say that protein has no involvement, but it seems to confirm that the wide circulated pronouncements of certain scientists that protein promotes aging is badly misleading. One reason is that protein is likely to be of less of a concern than carbohydrates for aging, is that the ketogenic diet, by definition, is very low in carbohydrates, extends lifespan. The ketogenic diet also inhibits mTOR by increase of AMPK. This is despite the fact that the ketogenic diet normally contains a full complement of protein, perhaps 10 to 15% of calories, and sometimes more. Generally, if you want to be in ketosis, they tell you to stay below 20%, but 15%. And again, guys, this is generally known. You need about 15 to 20%, as I told you earlier, of your calories just for human maintenance. Now, if you're fasting, that isn't necessarily true, right? But your body has mechanisms to preserve your muscle. So it talks about glucose and lifespan, a bunch of other stuff. You guys can go through this article if you wish. You guys who've been here forever know I don't generally read full articles because I just try to direct you guys to information more than try to explain every little thing to you, because it's this amazing thing where I like to treat you like adults with thinking brains. And though I am here to help guide you, I can't teach you everything. And you got to figure it out on your own to some degree. You got to figure out how these things can work for you. I can't tell you how to live your life. I am here because I'm compelled to be here to talk about things that I know, and to help build communities and to maybe help strengthen our society. And, one of the ways I do that, by the way, guys, being here, is by growing the channel. And one of the best ways I've done that is by connecting with other small YouTubers. But your guys' help is very much appreciated, and sharing this out and liking it, talking to people who, oh, you might like this guy. He's got a little channel, whatever. And I'm pretty real. I know a lot of you guys. Try and keep it real here. I know a lot of you guys. I met some of you in person. Have some of y'all's phone numbers. So we're a community here, and I want to keep it that way. I never think I'm going to be like some giant YouTuber, but even if I blew up one day, I want to keep it. like real. Let's keep it a community, a real community of people who are like-minded, who want to build strong societies. And with that, I can't hold your hand, but I can point you in the right direction. So here from the NIH, protein consumption linked to longevity. This is from 2014. I just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through this, but the NIH seems to have other data. And let's read just this mid sentence here. The researchers analyzed information on more than 6,800 U.S. adults aged 50 and over from the third National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, a periodic health and nutritional survey of the U.S. population. The results linked the survey data with National Death Index data, which provides the timing and causes of death. Results were published on March 4th, 2014, in Cell Metabolism. Now, again, this is a survey, so it's not an accurate study in any way, shape, or form, but this is counter data. This is one inaccurate study versus another inaccurate study, right? Participants were categorized into three groups based on the percent of self-reported, meaning inaccurate, and arbitrary. And by the way, folks, people tend to lie and tend to write the foods that they think are healthy down versus what they actually eat. Calorie intake that came from protein, high 20% or more, moderate 10 to 19% more, or low, less than 10%. They were further split into another category of 50 to 65, yada, yada, yada. The adults who reported the higher protein intake had a 75% increase in overall mortality and were 4 times more likely to die from cancer during the following 18 years than those in the low protein group. So there's that, right? The moderate protein diet was associated with a 3-fold increase in cancer mortality compared to the low protein diet. So these associations, which were adjusted for numerous factors, including smoking, waist circumference, chronic conditions. By the way, the smoking is a big one because people who eat meat tend to be smokers as well. Yada, yada, yada. Conversely, participants ages 65 and older, those who consumed high amounts of protein had a 28% lower risk of dying from any cancer and a 60% lower risk of dying from cancer. Those associations weren't influenced by whether the protein was derived from animal or plant sources. A higher protein diet was also associated with a 5-fold increase in diabetes mortality across all ages. One limitation of the study, yada, yada, yada. And of course, talked about IGF-1. So, again, 3 groups: high protein, moderate, low protein. And reported that the high protein intake had a higher risk of these mortality rates. But there's not a split that is like once you're at 20. I mean, is that person in the high group, are they eating 50% of their calories from protein? Just says 20 or more. So there's not like a split there that's quite even. It's trying to get little 10 percentages. You don't know if a 5% would make a difference, but like I said, it's all self-reported. So why does it matter? And then it kind of says contradictory evidence below, and then goes on to say this other thing. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting, the protein consumption linked to longevity, right? I think that the evidence is clear that in actual studies of healthy people who are older, they eat animal products. They eat protein. You'll find that. But I don't need to go through all that. I showed you that other paper. What I do want to talk about is this thing I just saw today. And this is it. I'm out of here, guys. I'm out. Made a 2-hour long show. I can't do that tomorrow. Cannot do that tomorrow. But it's all right. Evolutionary biologists reveal how exercise unlocks human longevity. On the flip side, there are biological penalties for not working out. Now, this is all theory. These are not studied. These are guesses. But to some degree, whether you believe in evolution or not, or any of that stuff, the evidence that educates these guesses, it they seem reasonable. So essentially, they're making an argument, which I agree with. I've seen, and I know the data on the older people. What happened? Oh, oh no. Huh? Would I get into a slideshow here? What are you doing to me? I mean, I guess I could do that, but we'll do that. You guys can't look at my tabs anymore. So, they're talking about this mentality that we have today, of how we treat our elderly, and a lot of us don't have our. It's seen as a sign of being impoverished to have your family living nearby, or even in your home when they're elderly, and in helping with your children and all these things, because we live in a materialistic society, right? We live in a society that values wealth and climbing to the top more than, are we good and moral? Are we healthy? Are we helping out our fellow man? Uh, this is a really telltale sign to me of the sickness and weakness of our society. What are your thoughts on pescatarians? That's fine. If you want to be a pescatarian, at least you're getting animal protein, but I think we're meant to be ruminant animals, or eat ruminant animals, that is, primarily. So, but no, I mean, I like fish. I eat herring and salmon every day practically, either smoked herring or smoked salmon, generally speaking. So, um, either for lunch is what I've been doing. I was thinking about switching it to breakfast, but I did that yesterday. I didn't feel well. So, but I also had some fruit with it, and I don't know, if I did something. So today I ate my ground beef concoction. Anyways, back to the point here. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. It's got to be done. Old age comes with a hidden benefit for our species that is very much to our evolutionary advantage. Our elders both care for and teach the young how to survive, but not today, right? Now, a team of evolutionary biologists has a theory to explain humans' remarkable longevity. Humans typically hang around for so many years, yada, yada, yada. They talk about, in a recent perspective article called The Active Grandparent Hypothesis, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, evolutionary biologists and biomedical researchers from Harvard University lay out two theories as to why physical activity may fuel this longevity. Well, I don't need to go down evolutionary biology to explain this. One, atrophy. If you don't use it, you lose it. The problem is most people don't think of long-term things for health when they are young, because we have a society that's about money and getting to the top and burn it fast. Most people burn the candle at both ends, folks. If we took our time, a little bit, if we maybe, maybe we could do things different, like instead of trying to get our kids out the door and going to college and stuff like that after we educate them for so while, maybe we should worry about them having a good spouse, especially for our daughters. And maybe the spouse already has a job, but maybe we're in their lives and help out with their kids. And then they could go get a career when their kids get older, and we could be around, and then they could take care of us instead of putting us in the nursing home for taking care of their kids. Those kind of things, an intergenerational thing. You don't have to live in the same house, just near enough, right? In any case, so for that, you got to exercise, be healthy to take care of the little ones. I'm 40. I have a little one. I have a 5-month-old. It's definitely way different than when I was 23. Way different. I don't have the same amount of energy. But I've done things to abuse my body to some extent. Things I've had injuries. I have things I have to heal. The point is, though, I didn't think of my longevity enough when I was younger and burnt the candle at both ends, and most of you have too. Um, so if I kept up with my fitness better, if I kept up with my eating, if I'd been more disciplined, more habit, right? If I had continued low and slow, as they say in cooking, but really that's what you want. You want just enough stimulus that you can gain a little bit instead of trying to gain so much all at once. And so I feel like we wear ourselves out a lot. Um, so that's part of what's killing us today. That and all the sugar. Again, I'm not an anti-sugar guy. I just think we have too much of it, right? Too much food in general. We don't take breaks from it. So they talk about the longevity in different animals here. Many people in high income countries do not have to do manual labor, so they think this is part of it. Uh, we have this thing called retirement that's only been around a few years. Yeah, I mean, I don't believe in retirement personally. I haven't for some years. When people retire, they die very often. Um, so yeah, and then we push physical activity. We push for our children, but we don't push it as much for older people, even though we know it's healthy. And I talked about this earlier with like Asian cultures. They do more so, even if it's just old people in the park doing Tai Chi. Man, that movement, that joint mobility does wonders. But I can tell you, Russians know this. This is why I know this because between my studies of Asian martial arts and then later on Russian martial arts, um, this is part of it. So humans' nearest animal relative, the chimpanzee, is both lazier and less long-lived than humans. Adult chimps in the wild move 2 kilometers a day and typically die around 30. Comparative, Comparatively, hunter-gatherer humans and groups like the Hadza walk between 9 and 15 kilometers a day, and they can expect to live around till 70-ish. So similarly, high levels of activity characterize non-industrialized farming populations. Uh, Indicating that until recently, human adults engaged in moderate levels of daily physical activity. Yeah, I think walking's a good one. Not running, walking. A little bit of physical labor. That's why you weightlift and such, right? Do calisthenics or whatever. But I prefer not necessarily weightlifting for various reasons. I do use weights, guys, but people tend to chase how much weight they can use, and then you get injured. So again, it's that like steady wins the race kind of thing, right? Physically active makes good use of energy we need for reproduction. Paleolithic parents needed a lot of calories, and hunter-gatherer lifestyle constituted a CrossFit level daily workout of traveling, foraging, digging, hunting, preying animals. It did not. It did not. Only in traveling tribes. We have studied many tribes that still live very primitive lives, and they that were very effective. They go out hunting twice a week, and you know they walk long periods of time for the hunt sometimes, and to bring them back. But it depends on the tribe. Um, and the women do a lot of stuff around the camp, if you would, generally, and preparing food and whatever. And the men hunt, and then when they get back, the men tend to relax. And women will tell you that's misogynist. Anthropologists who are feminists will tell you that's misogynist, but because when the men go out, they're in a lot of danger, and I think they need to go out, and they're also need to watch the camp. And yeah, but women do forage locally, generally for roots and stuff like that as well. And again, this is all over the world, just very primitive cultures. This is what happens. But I don't think it's misogynist that men get to chill out, honestly, after they go and on a hunt. Just saying. When there is energy required for human mothering, a typical hunter-gatherer mother struggles to satisfy not only her own high energy needs, but also obtain extra calories for the substantial cost of nursing, circa 500 calories a day. That is nothing. 500 calories a day is not much, guys. So, I mean, I don't know. As well as feeding and caring for several older but still immature juveniles. Well, that's where the older folk come in, right? That is where the tribe comes in, the community with larger brains and maybe require as many as 400 calories a day. Okay. Okay. So it goes on, but basically the article is about, well, we exercised and the most likely older folk helped us out and they exercised by helping with chores and watching the children and yada, yada, yada. So, um, in any case, let me do chat and get out of here because it is time to go. Let me get this out of here. Be a big head in the screen now. All right. Already read anti-comic. He sent me a chat over an entropy, and then he says, the bread we eat is so much chemical, more chemical than food. The meat is lowest quality. This is what I was talking about fast food earlier. Uh, Restraints get best quality meat. Restaurants. Milk does go bad if you don't properly cheese it. No, it doesn't. Not raw milk. Not unpasteurized. No, it doesn't. It just turns into something else. You might not like it. They set it out in India. But yeah. I mean, I guess properly cheese it would be the right conditions, right? Uh, we had a guy go from scouts to sell. It's amazing. Oh, okay, yeah. Raw milk, oat milk, barley, and they barley and rye by the boatload in Egypt, at least in the Old Kingdom. Yeah, and beer. By Roman times, wheat was prevalent. Yeah. Always the best content, Bill. Rather enjoy it. Maybe we can boost your wife's work in the community, generate some PR. Sure. I mean, that was kind of the point of going over on Tim's show for them. And I'm always talking about like the power of YouTube and the internet because people are leaving mainstream. Like you have to understand that the people who are watching the mainstream are mostly boomers or people who are actually barely politically engaged, so it doesn't matter. But YouTube is where people are politically engaged. So it's important to reach politically engaged people because people who are watching mainstream media who have a, pre foregone opinion given to them. Well, what do they matter? What do they matter? The people who are politically engaged, who are looking at things, well, they are aware of the truth versus all of the nonsensical lies. Like those folks are on the independent medias, and I feel like a lot of places don't go after them as much as they should. Now, granted, the older boomer types who have money, who are on the mainstream media, they have money, so they're better often for big donations. But it doesn't matter for these orgs if the donations are big or small, so much as that they get the funding. And I can tell you, as far as White Coat goes, they're not a big org. They're only employing a few people. And I'm not going to say specifically their numbers. I don't know if I'm at liberty to do so, but it's it's dozens if you would at best, so or less. It's not a lot of folks, and they've been at it for a while, and all the stories you guys have been hearing have been coming out of them. So, um, and they've been working with Cassandra Fairbanks. They go on OAN and all of that, but they don't get the amount of views that Tim does. So, but Tim did talk about a lot of news that Justin, I think, well, I know he didn't want to address because White Coat tries to remain bipartisan. So, I noticed in the comments the next day, a lot of people were like, geez, let the guest talk. Yeah. But part of that was the subject matter as well, because the org is about defunding animal experiments and waste, because your government spends billions with a B of dollars on these horrible experiments that torture animals, which, by the way, folks, is completely unethical. You shouldn't be torturing animals. Even the Bible addresses this. Um, like, and they don't accomplish anything. So, if you guys didn't watch that episode, go back Monday. Like I said, though, Justin, he talks in it. He's in it, but Tim and Luke, they talk a lot more. So, anyways, from the bottom up, strong men make good cheese. There we go. Holly says, at almost 50, I can guarantee if you don't use it, you lose it. Oh, I know, because because of life, being a single dad and all kinds of stuff, I've been in and out of fitness in my life. And it goes away. And then when I was basically crippled the other year, it's just insane. And I've never really been injured to that level before either. So, I think the worst thing before that was I broke my pinky because I miscalculated a kick. My pinky toe, that is. Um, and man, that sucked. But I just walked on the inside edge of my foot for like 3 weeks and I was fine. That was in high school. Anyways, weight training and flexibility is the most important thing. Keep me feeling as I did 20 years ago. Yes, flexibility is huge. And everything I do is strength stretching. I know Alabaster called that mobility. Sure. I And I don't know. I mean, if you do both at the same time, I think mobility as joint articulation, your your joints have an ability to articulate, and that's mobility. If you don't have full joint articulation, you're losing mobility. Um, but some mobility, as far as flexibility goes, you need to strengthen the end range of motion, and that's where people generally are weakest at. Like, there's a reason why you can't do full splits. It's not because you're not capable. There's no muscles connecting those. It's because your body's like, oh, I'm not strong in that position. I don't know it. It's weird. You can't do this. Nope. So you got to strengthen it there, right? Burning the candle at both ends. Abortion and this attitude towards our elders. Yeah. Encouraged by the world to treat our elders like they're idiots and dispose. It's sickness. The root is society is not fearing God. Well, amen to that, Matt. I absolutely 100% agree. And in fact, the way that we're treating old people is evident by the way that young people are being praised. Like, the left are champion young people. They want to lower the voting age. Now we know that the lowering of the voting age is just a means to control, manipulate, and get votes. But that's from the top to the masses. It's, oh yes, look at the youth. Look at the youth. Think of their wisdom. And all I can think is when did we get an upside down world? Kids have never been wise. They might say things. They might say wonderful things that are insightful, but that's because they haven't been polluted by the world. It's their innocence, not their wisdom. Wisdom isn't innocence, guys. You cannot be wise and innocent. You can portray yourself as innocent. You can act innocently, but you cannot truly be intellectually or emotionally innocent if you are wise, because wisdom denotes that you've learned some great lesson and that you have some understanding. True innocence, as in the biblical definition, is ignorance. And that's what a child is. They're ignorant and helpless. ignorant and helpless. And this is why it's such a travesty that the left comes after them in so many different levels. So many different levels. All right, good to confirm. We'll just watch them. I have the time. All right, good, bud. I can get the views because my videos are weird with views. But again, small channel doesn't average a lot. Need you guys here more often. I'm streaming on at 4 p.m. on Monday, streaming at 4 p.m. on Thursday, and streaming at 4 p.m. on Fridays. I missed this Monday because of what I was talking about earlier with the my wife's work deal. And then, of course, Sundays I do the siesta stream, which is going to be a 2-hour or 3-hour stream. There, I will try to have guests. Won't always, but I will try to have guests, and we'll talk about the news stories of the weeks or things I've seen, things I thought were interesting. So, someone said earlier, everyone is nutrient deficient. I heard there's actually 90 nutrients. I don't know what the number is of nutrients you need, but vegans will tell you you need all the phytonutrients and all these other chemicals in plants. That's not necessarily true. We don't know though. But if you do, at least as far as studies go, as far as antioxidants, you're not getting a lot from plants. Most of what you get is from yourself. That's from glutathione. I like chicken bone marrow. Marrow gives me meat to my dogs. Marrow is good. If you can get a big old like shank marrow. All right, I pretty much covered the chat then. All right, let's see. Anything else come in? Nope. All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here. I'm going to have to apologize to my wife because I had no intention of streaming so long, but sounds like the baby's been pretty good. In any case, thanks for you all for being here. Thank you, Anti-Commie, for the donation today. I will be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. We should be talking about Stoicism and Christianity. I keep saying I'm going to talk about it, but haven't done that in a while. But we should do it tomorrow once again. So thank you once again for being here. Like, share, subscribe, and I will see you all later. This has been AllMinusOne, and I wish you all well.